I was the capital's most beautiful woman, yet also the demonic concubine despised by all. While the emperor was away on campaign, the empress poisoned me. She believed that with me dead, the emperor would return to being her wise and valiant husband. But she did not know that I was the final shackle restraining his bloodthirsty nature. I died. He, too, descended into utter madness. I died on the second day of Chu Lizzie's campaign. Under cover of night, the empress sent guards to surround my Qixia palace. Several burly maidservants seized my limbs and dragged me before her. She stood in sumptuous robes, looking down on me with disdain. First, she savored the sight of my misery, then hurled venomous curses at me. "You worthless slut! How dare you be a consort, standing above me? Die! Once you're dead, His Majesty will remember me again. He'll become my husband once more." Her shrill laughter rang in my ears, her face twisted into a hideous grimace. I stared at her coldly. She knew she hated me. But I never imagined she'd dare to kill me. The poisoned wine burned fiercely through my throat, agony overwhelming me. Too weak to turn my head, I caught sight of a freshly sewn undershirt laid out on the embroidered bed. Chu Lizzie disliked the overly soft fabrics in the palace, so each month I would sew him several undershirts using cotton blended with hemp thread. This was the first one for this month. I had intended to give it to him before his campaign. But that day, we had quarreled and parted on bad terms. I forgot about it. I intended to send it to the frontier tomorrow, but now, I fear it will never reach him. In the final second before my consciousness faded, I suddenly recalled Chu Lizzie's handsome, heroic face, his eyes bright as stars, and those words, "Yao Yao, wait for me to return." Ah! I am about to die. Chu Lizzie. I won't be here to wait for you. Perhaps it was an unjust death, for my soul did not dissipate. Instead, it traversed the depths of the palace, arriving at the frontier, beside Chu Lizzie. His deputy arrived at the tent curtain first. He strode in, his silver armor gleaming coldly, the hem stained with blood, dripping onto the ground with each step. No need to guess, he'd just returned from the battlefield. Likely a great victory. He'd reigned long enough to hide his emotions well, yet his deputy's face and eyes betrayed uncontrollable amusement. "Your Majesty, your first battle ends in triumph. That old fool of the Song family, I doubt he'll dare voice discontent again." The Song family. The Empress's natal clan. General Song, the Grand General of the state, held military power, commanding 80,000 elite troops. He had once used this strength to assist Chu Li in ascending the throne. After the emperor's coronation, however, the military authority remained with the general, a gesture meant to show trust in the veteran minister. Now, though, it had become a delicate balance of power between sovereign and subject. The deputy general fumed indignantly, "While you were absent, the southern barbarians provoked us at every turn." He refused to send troops to subdue them, claiming it was to guard against their treachery. In truth, he resents your punishment of confining the Empress to the Phoenix Palace, forcing you to yield and release her. But does he not consider that the Empress caused the fourth prince to fall into the water and nearly lose his life? Such malice, should she not be punished? My heart jolted, and I froze completely. Chu Lizzie's brow furrowed slightly. He shot the deputy general a cold glance, and the man abruptly fell silent. Soon after, however, he scrutinized Chu Lizzie from head to toe and whispered, "Your Majesty. Did the noble consort not become angry when you arrived?" Chu Lizzie instinctively touched the scar at the back of his neck. Noticing the deputy's puzzled gaze, he turned away, his tone hardening. "Her nature is gentle and kind. She takes little pleasure in anger." The deputy assumed he was displeased. But I knew better. He was guilty. First, my nature is anything but gentle. Second, I often quarrel with him. Third, before leaving the palace, we had a fierce argument. It was over this very matter. The Empress, consumed by jealousy over my favor, constantly made things difficult for me. Last month, she even instigated Consort Lu to push my son into an ice cave, nearly costing him his life. Consort Lu was executed. The Empress was confined to her quarters. The Empress Dowager stripped her of her authority over the 6 palaces. Yet within 3 days, the Emperor suddenly pardoned the Empress and restored her power over the 6 palaces. The palace echoed with countless mocking whispers. That night, Chu Lizzie and I fought fiercely. Words flew recklessly from my mouth. I called him blind, unable to see the truth. I called him unworthy of being a father. I hated myself even more, a mother who couldn't protect her own child. Enraged, he turned and stormed out. The next time we met, I had fainted from pregnancy, on the eve of his departure for war. I refused to acknowledge him. He remained silent, only saying to wait for his return. I had believed Chu Lizzie truly believed the Empress's pleas of innocence when he released her. Little did I know he was coerced by General Song, all for the sake of the border campaign. And now he was leading the troops personally, likely hoping to seize military authority once more, free from the pressure of powerful generals. I had misread the situation. "You may leave." The deputy commander bowed and withdrew. Only then did Mingda, Chu Lizzie's personal eunuch, enter, carrying writing implements. After Mingda arranged the brushes and inkstones, Chu Lizzie sat at the desk, clearly intending to write a letter. I floated behind him. First, he wrote a letter to the Empress Dowager, instructing her on palace affairs. Then, on a fresh sheet of paper, he began, "Yao Yao, is all well within the palace?" He paused. Listening to the steady patter of rain outside the tent, he sighed and continued, "I should not have quarreled with you that day. You were carrying our child, and little Fourth was frightened into the water, his life hanging in the balance. I should have understood your distress and never so easily released the Empress. But there were reasons for this incident. Once I return to the palace, I will explain everything clearly to you and severely punish the Empress to vent your anger. Your husband misses little one dearly. I only wish to reunite with her during the spring festival in 2 months." Reading these words, I felt as if I'd swallowed a whole sour plum. The first taste was sweet, but the aftertaste was nothing but sour bitterness. I saw the smile playing at Chu Lizzie's lips as he wrote the letter, saw him carefully seal and hand it to Mingda. Yet before Mingda could take it, Chu Lizzie furrowed his brow slightly and asked hesitantly, "Mingda, I've been away on campaign for barely half a month. To yield and coax her already, isn't that spoiling her too much?" How could Mingda dare answer? He could only stand there, flustered. Chu Lizzie pondered for a moment, then slammed the letter down on the table in irritation. "Forget it. She's grown arrogant from my favor lately, spouting nonsense. If I coddle her again, she'll only take advantage of my heart and act even more recklessly." He ended with a cold snort. I knew he must have recalled the heart-piercing words I'd spoken in our argument, words spoken without restraint. In that instant, my heart clenched painfully. It stung bitterly. It ached intensely. Had I known that would be our final meeting, how could I have brought myself to quarrel with him? I gently placed my hand on his shoulder, longing to feel his warmth once more. I imagined it must still be fiery. In winters past, I'd always curl up in his embrace. He'd tease me for lacking any dignity befitting an imperial consort, saying I resembled nothing but a lazy cat. I'd feign anger and scratch his chest with my fingertips. The tickling would make him suddenly pull me close, tossing me onto the bed. And so, a night of passion would unfold. But now, my fingertips are icy cold, with no one left to warm them. I had thought Chu Lizzie would never write to me again. Yet he ultimately entrusted the letter to Mingda, merely instructing, "Keep the Empress consort cold for 1 more day. Tomorrow, send her back to the capital. Once she receives the letter, who knows how she'll mock me, stubborn on the outside, soft-hearted within, still grieving for her." He sighed, a helpless smile touching his lips. I watched, stared. Pain pierced me like a bitter wind, freezing my marrow, tearing at my soul without mercy. Chu Lizzie yearned for our reunion. The New Year festival, lanterns aglow beneath the moon. Husband and wife hand in hand, their young child beside them. How beautiful it would be. But Chu Lizzie didn't know I was already dead. All his longing was but a delusion. Thinking of this, my heart felt as if it had been ripped out, leaving only a hollow void. Blood poured out, dripping and splattering. Blood-soaked. Pain beyond endurance. After the letter was sent, I stayed by Chu Lizzie's side. When he marched to battle, I waited for his return in the camp. Sometimes, waiting late into the night, boredom would overtake me, and I would drift off to sleep. Upon waking, I would find Chu Lizzie had returned. In the dim light, his sharp profile was bathed in a warm glow. His eyes, usually dark and piercing, too intense to look at directly, now softened, appearing gentle and tender. He had seized the throne through bloody battles on the battlefield. No one could truly regard him as an emperor as gentle and without a trace of temper as his father had been. Yet, many still hoped he would become like his father, a benevolent ruler. For this, he restrained his nature. He no longer led armies personally and ordered the abolition of cruel punishments. He yielded to public sentiment and changed greatly. He had even ceased to resemble the husband I once revered as a god. In life, I often doubted whether he truly loved me. Or if, as the consorts whispered, he merely held me aloft as a shield for the Empress. I had never believed those words. But when my son nearly met a tragic end, he spared the Empress with ease. That truly terrified me. So I lost my mind. I went mad. Until our final meeting. So wretched, so pitiful. I drifted to Chu Lizzie's side, leaning softly against his shoulder, whispering, "I wronged you. I'm truly sorry." Chu Lizzie suddenly stopped writing. I thought he'd noticed me. I looked up at him, my eyes unwittingly carrying a hint of hope. These days when no one could speak. They were unbearable. But then, a figure entered the tent with the wind, stirring up a carpet of yellow leaves. Fragile, ready to shatter at the slightest touch. It felt ominous. Chu Lizzie frowned slightly. Mingda stepped forward and whispered, "Your Majesty, a reply has arrived from the palace." It had been 7 days since his last letter. A flicker of joy crossed Chu Lizzie's face as he motioned Mingda closer. Mingda presented 2 letters, explaining, "This one is from Her Majesty the Empress Dowager. This one is from the noble consort." Chu Lizzie pondered briefly before reading the Empress Dowager's first. It reported that all matters in the palace were well. The Empress and the other consorts frequently sent their regards. The 4th prince was safe and sound, settled in her Shao palace, everything stable. Only the noble consort had developed a facial rash due to an allergic reaction, appearing with a light veil during her greetings. However, she was already greatly improved and required no excessive concern. Upon reading the final sentence, Chu Lizzie's brow furrowed deeply. He pondered for a moment before taking the other letter. It contained but a single line, "Your Majesty is also in my thoughts. May you be victorious in every battle." The handwriting was in the elegant style I favor. It seems the Empress truly put considerable effort into this before her assassination attempt. Who knows how long she plotted this? It was merely a single sentence. Yet Chu Lizzie stared at it for an agonizingly long time. His fingertips traced the characters for a moment, his expression growing increasingly grim. He took a deep breath and turned to look at Mingda. His voice was cold, "Return to the palace immediately. You must personally ensure the imperial consort is safe and sound." The Empress had made a mistake. She could never have guessed that in my private letters to Chu Lizzie, I never addressed him as Your Majesty. I only used his childhood name. Bayou. Bayou. The upright pine and sturdy cypress, their years nearing dusk. The late emperor had hoped his youngest son would become a gentleman of extraordinary learning, his hands never stained with blood. But he never imagined Chu Lizzie would become a god of war, unstoppable on the battlefield. From a minor prince in a remote fiefdom, he ascended step by step to the supreme imperial throne. With each stride came slaughter. He slew his treacherous elder brother who murdered their father, executed the Empress Dowager who controlled court and realm, purged the sycophants who deceived the sovereign, and eliminated disobedient or disrespectful generals and soldiers. Every step was drenched in blood. Yet fate defied his expectations. He had long since stained his hands with blood. But he remained a gentleman. Unbound by status, he ate and slept alongside his border garrison soldiers. He did not demand they address him as Your Majesty, only as general. Here, he was not an emperor seated in high chambers, but a commander wielding a sharp sword, leading his troops into battle. A great victory at the frontier pushed the southern barbarians back 100 li. At the celebratory banquet, the soldiers laughed joyfully, drinking heartily. Yet Chu Lizzie often gazed into the distance, his mind elsewhere. That was the direction of the imperial palace. He was worrying about me. Just then, a young soldier approached with a grin. "General," he asked, "I notice you often gaze at the jade pendant at your waist. Could it be something special?" Chu Lizzie paused, his eyes falling on the pendant. Its jade was smooth and lustrous, clearly well worn from constant handling. A soft smile touched his lips. "Nothing special. Just a parting gift from my wife before she left." His wife? My heart skipped a beat, my mind blank for a fleeting moment. This jade pendant was clearly, hearing this, the soldiers murmured in admiration, the Emperor and Empress share such deep affection. Truly enviable. No. Chu Lizzie waved his hand dismissively, downing a large gulp of wine. Not the Empress. His voice wasn't particularly loud. Only those nearby could hear clearly. The Emperor's wife wasn't the Empress. Who else could it be? Everyone froze in shock. Yet Chu Lizzie remained oblivious, continuing to drink heartily. Lost in thought, he suddenly snorted with derision, "That's not right either. She should have been my Empress." The trailing words dissolved into a faint, suppressed sob. Chu Lizzie smashed his wine bowl, clenched the jade pendant tightly, and bowed his head. No one but me saw the cold-blooded Emperor, who slaughtered men and demons alike on the battlefield, with reddened eyes. Just as no one knew that jade pendant he never parted with. It was my gift. The wife he spoke of, that was me. Only me. His Empress should have been me. When he ascended the throne, the decree he personally wrote to crown his Empress bore my name. Hiao Yao, daughter of Marquis He of Ningwa, shall be my principal consort. Having purged treachery from without and secured peace within, she aided me through hardship and co-founded our realm. Now that the realm is pacified and I ascend the throne, our mutual support warrants her rightful title. Hence, I now dispatch an envoy bearing golden scrolls and seals to proclaim you Empress. You shall uphold the divine mandate, serve as the motherly model for the realm, and set the standard for the 6 palaces. When I married him at 16, he was merely an unloved young prince. I was his principal consort. I accompanied him from a remote fief to the bustling capital. Of the He family's army of 100,000 warriors, only 30,000 remained by the end. I had no brothers. My father, wounded on the battlefield, could never return to the frontier. Yet the court was in turmoil, hearts restless, and the southern tribes stirred with discontent. Chu Lizzie needed a commander to command respect at the border. The Song family naturally bore this responsibility. But the Song family needed an empress. So, my imperial decree of coronation was burned. Overnight. I was demoted from wife to concubine. The Song family's jewel became empress. And I became imperial consort. I never coveted the empress's throne. But I do harbor regret. Regret that in this lifetime, I shall never have the chance to be his rightful wife. Throughout history, only the empress may share the emperor's bed in life and his tomb in death. However esteemed an imperial consort may be, she remains a consort, a concubine. The privilege of eternal union in life and death, it seems destined to elude me. Thinking of this, a sudden pang of sorrow washed over me. I wonder where the empress has cast my body now. That poison was too potent. My death must have been gruesome and horrifying. By the time Chu Lizzie returned to the palace, I would likely have already rotted and stunk. Would he even recognize me? And where would he place me? I drifted lightly to Chu Lizzie's side, slipping my hand into his palm, seeking a flicker of warmth. He must have drunk too much. His face flushed, his gaze unfocused, he kept tracing the patterns on his jade pendant. Leaning against his shoulder, my voice was soft, as if afraid to disturb him. I said, "Chu Lizzie, I've missed you a little. Though you're right beside me, I long to hold you. But that has become a foolish fantasy. Chu Lizzie, please, find me. Will you?" At that moment, a panicked, hoarse voice echoed from afar, "Your Majesty. Your Majesty." I looked up. It was Mingda, who had returned to the palace days ago. He was back. Chu Lizzie snapped his head up. Mingda, his expression utterly frantic, stumbled forward and threw himself to his knees before Chu Lizzie. Before he could speak, sobs broke through. Chu Lizzie froze. "Mingda? What? What happened?" But the next second, he suddenly remembered the task he had entrusted to Mingda. His heart was filled with extreme unease. He took a step forward, grabbed Mingda's collar, and shouted sternly, "Have you seen the imperial consort? Is she all right?" Mingda looked up, his hoarse voice accompanied by sobs, but his words were clear, "Your Majesty, a plague has broken out in the palace at some unknown time. Her Majesty the Empress acted with lightning speed to contain its spread, but the imperial consort," his voice caught for a moment. His body trembled uncontrollably, whether from cold or fear, he couldn't tell. But the imperial consort has unfortunately fallen ill. She has been unconscious for 5 days. The imperial physicians say that if she does not awaken within a month, she may never regain consciousness, Your Majesty. Chu Lizzie froze, his gaze blank, as if he hadn't heard Mingda's words. Yet when he looked into Mingda's eyes, they were shrouded in deep, inky darkness. He clutched Mingda's robe so tightly that the veins on his knuckles stood out. I watched his desperate, trapped beast expression and drifted to his side, wanting to comfort him, but I couldn't touch anything. "Don't worry, Chu Lizzie. Don't be afraid." My voice trembled as I tried to soothe him. Just like many years ago, when he first heard the tragic news of the late emperor's passing, he had looked just as hollow and helpless. Back then, I had been by his side, holding him close, repeating over and over, "Don't be afraid, Chu Lizzie. I'm here." But now, I am gone too. He can no longer hear my words. Even though we are inches apart, humans and ghosts walk separate paths. Now, what separates Chu Lizzie and me is not distance. It is life and death. The entire tent fell into a deathly silence. Until Chu Lizzie suddenly let go, his face contorted in fury as he roared, "Impossible. Absolutely impossible." With that, he strode toward the stables without a backward glance. The crowd gasped. The emperor intended to return to the palace immediately. But the frontier was still unstable. How could the vanguard commander be absent? Yet, seeing Chu Lizzie's sinister and terrifying expression, no one dared to step forward to stop him. Only Mingda suddenly clutched Chu Lizzie's legs, halting his advance, and cried out in a shrill, piercing voice, "Your Majesty! Your Majesty! You cannot return to the capital. The imperial consort remains unconscious. The imperial physicians work day and night without rest. Even your return would do nothing to help her." But now, the southern barbarians retreat again and again. The recapture of our lost territories is within reach. If you leave, they will regroup and come to disrupt the border once more. The people will suffer again. Your Majesty, you cannot leave. Chu Lizzie kicked Mingda 3 meters away, but Mingda, ignoring the pain, lunged forward again, his voice hoarse and desperate, "Your Majesty, do you remember? Before his death, the venerable general he had only one wish, to reclaim the lost territories. Your Majesty! Your Majesty, you are the Emperor! Your Majesty! You are not merely the husband of one consort. You are the sovereign of 10,000 subjects. How can you let personal affection blind you to the greater cause?" The words thundered like a bolt from the blue. Chu Lizzie's struggling movements froze. He lowered his gaze to Mingda, while soldiers behind him knelt in supplication. A flicker of bewilderment flickered in his dark eyes. In that instant, he seemed utterly helpless, like a child. I stood beside him, my hand gently grasping his. Yet I felt an overwhelming sorrow. He was crying. Chu Lizzie, his heart was weeping. I wanted to cry too. I wanted to tell him not to return to the capital for me. All of this was the Empress's scheme to cover up her poisoning of me. I had already died. Chu Lizzie, you are an emperor. You are an emperor bearing the weight of millions of subjects. You absolutely must not risk yourself for me. But I had spoken. He could not hear me. Mingda spoke again, her voice thick with unmasked sorrow. "Your Majesty, the imperial consort cherishes you above all else. Surely she would not wish for you to return to the capital and risk your life." At these words, Chu Lizzie ceased all struggle. He froze in place, as if encased in ice. Behind him knelt the countless soldiers who swore allegiance to him, awaiting the chance to follow him in reclaiming the land seized by 2 invading dynasties and striking fear into the southern barbarians. This would have been a glorious chapter in Chu Lizzie's imperial annals. Yet Chu Lizzie turned his head, gazing into the distance. For a very, very long time. Unblinking. Until a single tear fell. His thin lips parted, but no one heard the words he murmured. Then what of my wife? What of my little sister? Except for me. My heart twisted in agony. I stepped forward and embraced his body, still as towering and majestic as ever, feeling the despair radiating endlessly from his chest. I whispered softly, "It's okay. Chu Lizzie, don't be afraid. I'm with you. So. Don't be afraid." Chu Lizzie stayed. He waged war against the southern barbarians. On the battlefield, he grew increasingly ruthless and grim, leaving corpses strewn across the land wherever he went. The southern barbarians retreated again and again until they were forced to surrender their lost territories, pledging allegiance and agreeing to pay annual tribute of cattle, sheep, and horses. Standing upon the land lost for nearly a century, the soldiers rejoiced, their laughter and songs filling the air. Yet no one noticed. From that day onward, their emperor never smiled again. He awoke in panic from nightmares, unable to rest day or night. Yet by daylight, he must don his armor once more, leading his soldiers into battle. Within half a month, he was emaciated and gaunt. As soon as hostilities ceased, Chu Lizzie rushed without pause toward the imperial capital. 7 days and 7 nights. Riding day and night without rest, the scars on Chu Lizzie's body healed only to tear open again, heal again, and tear open once more. But he had no time to care. His heart and eyes were filled only with thoughts of his wife, still unconscious within the imperial city. I watched, gazed, and ached. I wanted to tell him, "Chu Lizzie, don't rush." But just as they entered the imperial city, a heavy tolling of bells echoed from the distant depths of the palace. Once, twice, thrice. The imperial consort has passed away. Someone in the crowd cried out. Then, amidst the people, someone burst into laughter. Shouting, "The demon consort is dead. How wonderful!" Just as His Majesty recaptured the lost territories, the demon concubine dies, double good fortune. Who knows how many loyal officials that demon concubine harmed? Earlier this year, she slandered Grand Tutor Wang, causing His Majesty to exile his entire family. What a good man Grand Tutor Wang was. Someone questioned doubtfully, but wasn't Grand Tutor Wang punished for corruption, bribery, and trading official positions? I don't believe it. Besides, the Empress is so virtuous. If not for her handling of this plague, who knows how many would have died. Yet such a good person was trampled underfoot by the demon concubine, and to this day, she hasn't even borne a prince. Well then, it seems the demon concubine's death is indeed a blessing. Many commoners nodded in agreement. No one noticed that the two who had spoken first exchanged a glance and vanished silently into the crowd. A cold, deep voice sounded at Mingda's ear. "Follow them. Bring those two back to me." Mingda quickly turned to look at Chu Lizzie, only to discover that her usually beaming emperor was now deathly pale, his shoulders trembling. His eyes were bloodshot as he stared at her, eerily ghostly. Mingda nodded hastily in agreement. I leaned against Chu Lizzie's back, gently patting his spine as if soothing a crying child. Softly, I murmured, "Don't mind it, Chu Lizzie. Just rumors. I never care. All these years. The Empress's clumsy tricks. I never gave them a second thought. So there's no need to be angry on my behalf." I followed Chu Lizzie as he rode deep into the palace grounds. The Empress heard the news and rushed over, but Chu Lizzie didn't even glance at her. He dismounted and walked step by step to the gates of Qixia Palace. Yet only a handful of people knelt in homage before Qixia Palace, and most of them were palace servants. There was none of the dignity befitting an imperial consort. Chu Lizzie attempted to enter the palace, but the Empress blocked his path. "Your Majesty, the imperial consort perished from a contagious disease. To prevent any risk, you absolutely must not enter the palace." Yet Chu Lizzie's dark gaze fixed upon her, laced with scathing derision. "Empress, must I seek your permission to see my own imperial consort?" The Empress's face paled slightly, yet she forced herself to speak. "Your Majesty, I only speak for the sake of your imperial health. Had the imperial consort still been alive, she would surely not wish to see you treat yourself with such disregard." Her words were righteous and earnest. "Your Majesty, please reconsider." The Empress knelt at his feet, and officials who had rushed to the scene knelt in unison, echoing her plea. But Chu Lizzie didn't even glance at them, striding directly toward Chisha Palace. Such utter disregard signaled he held no one in esteem. The Empress, humiliated before everyone, was left utterly disgraced. I turned to look and saw the Empress, unable to maintain her usual dignified composure, her face twisted in extreme fury. She clenched the hand of a nearby palace maid so tightly, clearly furious. Yet not a single word escaped her lips. She dared not obstruct him further. Humph. Serves her right. Let her stew in her own anger. I couldn't help but let a small smile curve my lips. Just then, Chu Lizzie's gentle voice reached my ears. "Consort, I have returned." Turning my head, I watched Chu Lizzie slowly pace to the bedside. The chamber reeked of bitter medicine, devoid of sunlight, shrouded in gloom. The woman on the bed lay with eyes tightly shut, her delicate white face scarred by smallpox. Pockmarked and terrifying. Her features bore a faint resemblance to mine, yet I instantly knew this corpse was not me. After all, the death of someone poisoned never looked so peaceful. Who knew where the Empress had found this body? Chu Lizzie raised his hand to touch me, but his fingertips trembled violently, hesitating to descend. His voice raspy and choked when he spoke again. "Yao Yao, I'm back. Bai Yu has returned. Open your eyes and look at me. I reclaimed our lost lands. I beat those southern barbarians who once bullied us and injured my father-in-law into submission. They now pledge allegiance to me. I fulfilled General He's dying wish. Our elder brother didn't die in vain, I avenged him. Are you happy? Yao Yao, please, just smile for me." Me remained in deep slumber. Chu Lizzie could no longer hold back the choking sobs in his throat. Tears fell one by one. "Mimi, do you blame me for not rushing back to the capital to be with you? I was wrong. I was wrong, Yao Yao. I was truly wrong. I shouldn't have argued with you. I shouldn't have spared the Empress. You were right. I'm unworthy as a husband, and even more so as a father. Hit me. Scold me. Please, don't sleep. Yao Yao, open your eyes, please. Don't leave me alone. I'm scared. I'm so scared. Yao Yao, please." As he spoke, he cupped my hands against his cheeks. But the next moment, his expression twisted violently. He held the hands before his eyes, tracing their contours with trembling fingers. His face darkened with each passing second. Finally, he flung the hands away, his eyes bloodshot like an enraged demon. "No. This isn't Yao Yao." He finally recognized me. The Empress had made another mistake. Finding a woman who bore a 7/10 resemblance to me was indeed no easy task. But she forgot, I was never a pampered noblewoman of the capital. I am the daughter of a general, skilled in archery and horsemanship from childhood, later enduring hardship in the fiefdom. My hands could never be this delicate and pale. Chu Lizzie must recognize me. I trust him. I have always trusted him. Watching the man pace helplessly across the hall, roaring like a trapped beast. Tears streamed down his face. "My little sister. Where are you?" Yet even as I whispered his name over and over in his ear, saying, "I'm right here, by you," he couldn't see me. Nor could he hear me. Heaven always works this way. Just when you think the worst is over, it strikes you down, shattering you completely. Then it tells you, yes, this is fate. No one but me knows what happened to Chu Lizzie in Chisha Palace. The Empress certainly doesn't know that Chu Lizzie had already discovered clues about the corpse. Chu Lizzie deceived everyone with an utterly calm demeanor. He held grand funeral rites for the imperial consort, observed a 7-day fast, and finally, posthumously honored me as Empress Xiaoi. Every official was horrified. 2 empresses, one living, one dead, how absurd. Yet Chu Lizzie insisted. No one could stop him, nor dared to. My reputation as the demonic consort spread throughout the court. Many likened me to Baosi and Daji, seductresses who bewitched their rulers, hoping my death would transform their emperor into a benevolent ruler for the ages. Yet, when he reinstated brutal punishments and executed ministers for treason one after another, the court realized no one could soothe the emperor's wrath. Chu Lizzie became like a blade stripped of its sheath, cold and gleaming, deadly to all who touched it. Court officials lived in constant dread, fearing this blade might fall upon their own necks. They began to yearn for the imperial consort. Yet at the same time, Chu Lizzie seemed to have forgotten her. He favored only the Empress. Each time he visited the inner palace, he would spend the night in her chambers. Even when the imperial consort reigned supreme in the harem, Chu Lizzie would visit other consorts' palaces at the Empress Dowager's behest. But now, Chu Lizzie appeared to have forgotten everyone else, remembering only the Empress. Resentment toward the Empress began to simmer within the harem. Then, the Empress's own brother, Song Qingshu, was denounced by the Ministry of Personnel. He was accused of forcibly abducting commoners' daughters, coercing the wives of ministers, and even allowing his brutal servants to beat citizens in the streets. Moreover, dozens of bodies were unearthed in his private courtyard. Men and women, old and young, every single one covered in wounds. The sight was too horrific to behold. The revelation sent shockwaves through the imperial court. Within a day, Chu Lizzie sentenced Song Qingshu to decapitation. No one dared intercede for him, fearing repercussions. Yet Song Qingshu and the Empress shared a deep bond. How could she not plead for him? Refusing to see her, Chu Lizzie found the Empress kneeling in the imperial study, refusing to leave. Only as dusk fell and the Empress swayed on the verge of collapse did Chu Lizzie finally appear. A hint of concern touched his face. "Why are you here, Empress?" Her voice hoarse with anguish, the Empress pleaded, "Your Majesty, my younger brother is young and ignorant. He committed this terrible crime. I beg you to grant him a chance to atone." She had expected the Emperor to deliberate for a moment. Yet to everyone's surprise, Chu Lizzie agreed without hesitation. "Since the Empress speaks thus, let it be commuted to exile instead." At these words, everyone froze in shock. After all, the sentence had been pronounced, a golden decree, unchangeable. Officials kneeling behind the Emperor pleaded urgently, "Your Majesty, you must not," but Chu Lizzie didn't even glance at him, instead supporting the Empress as they slowly departed. Seeing his tenderness, the Empress stared at him blankly, momentarily speechless. Chu Lizzie smiled reassuringly. "Empress, do not worry. Once you bear a son, when I grant a general pardon, your brother will return. Otherwise, how could I explain to the people why I released him so easily?" The Empress froze. "A prince?" Chu Lizzie nodded. "Indeed. Though I have 4 sons, none are legitimate heirs. In truth, only the 4th prince remained alive. The first 3 had all died in infancy. But the 4th prince was born to Empress Xiaoyi. Is he not a legitimate heir?" The Empress's gaze held a hint of probing. Chu Lizzie, oblivious, snorted impatiently. "The 4th prince is dull-witted and unfit for great responsibilities. I am counting on you, Empress." At these words, the Empress's previously sallow complexion instantly flushed with color. "Yes. This servant shall not disappoint your Majesty's trust." Yet she knew not. Once she departed, all tenderness vanished from Chu Lizzie's face. His eyes grew pitch black and ominous, like a venomous serpent lurking in the shadows, waiting to deliver a fatal blow to its prey. News of Song Qingshu's sentence being commuted to exile spread. Rumors began circulating that the Empress had interceded on his behalf. The Emperor cherished her so deeply that even his golden words could be altered. The rumors grew fiercer. Finally, some even claimed Empress Song resembled the infamous Empress of the Sui dynasty, a woman of the harem who refused to stay in her place, scheming to seize control of the court, meddle in state affairs, and bewitch the sovereign with her wicked words. I saw the Empress turn pale with rage upon entering the Phoenix Palace, then smash every porcelain vase in the chamber in one furious burst. I felt nothing but immense satisfaction. For 5 years, the Empress forced me to endure this silent agony. Now it was her turn to taste it. It was just a pity. Back then, she schemed relentlessly to smear my name, yet no matter how others stirred discontent, Chu Lizzie wouldn't believe a single word. Instead, he spared no effort to cheer me up. He loved me and believed I suffered wrongs because of him, so naturally, he treated me with utmost care. But the Empress received no such consideration. Time and again, she sought out Chu Lizzie only to be turned away. Her frustration grew until one day, overcome by rage, she fainted. Only then was it discovered she was 2 months pregnant. The news spread, and without hesitation, Chu Lizzie set aside state affairs to see her. What has come over the Empress? The Empress leaned into Chu Lizzie's embrace, tears streaming down her face like rain. Your Majesty, I have always been devoted solely to you. I never once sought to interfere in the affairs of the former court. You must believe me. Chu Lizzie smiled faintly. But wasn't it you who pleaded for Song Qingshu's sentence to be commuted? The Empress froze. Your Majesty, but Chu Lizzie had already taken her hand, soothing her gently. Enough. Nothing matters now. Your priority is to give birth to our son safely. The Empress instantly forgot everything, revealing a rare tender demeanor as she whispered, Your Majesty, stay with me tonight. I am afraid. Chu Lizzie looked at her but refused. No. Consort Song awaits me. I must go. With that, he turned and left without a backward glance. I looked back. The Empress, her long nails snapped in fury, her once delicate face now frosted with icy venom, murmured, Consort Song. Father truly thought of everything. Worried I couldn't attend to your Majesty during my pregnancy, he sent in a cousin. How considerate! As she spoke, the Empress's face turned faintly green, an ominous sign. Her maid, Tsueyu, hurried to soothe her. Your Majesty, you must not lose your temper. Once you give birth to the dragon's son, Consort Song will no longer have a place here. Just then, a respectful voice came from the doorway. Your Majesty, it is time for your medicine. This was the medicine the Emperor personally bestowed upon the Empress every day since her pregnancy. A sign of his cherishing. The Empress's expression softened slightly. Tsueyu hastened to reassure her, His Majesty truly cherishes your Majesty. Worried you might suffer during your pregnancy, he even personally ordered the Imperial Medical Bureau to prepare this pregnancy-preserving medicine. Back then, her voice grew very soft as she finished. Even Empress Xiaoyi never received such treatment. The Empress glanced at her and snorted coldly. Ever since that wretch he had died, my days have indeed become much more comfortable. Lifting the medicine bowl, the Empress let out a slow, derisive laugh. I truly believed His Majesty cherished her deeply. Yet how long has it been? He's already forgotten her completely. I only regret not disposing of her sooner, then I wouldn't have endured 5 years of being trampled underfoot. She drank the medicine, its bitterness bringing tears to her eyes. Unbeknownst to her, a young palace maid slipped away unnoticed from the doorway. Passing through layer upon layer of palace walls, the maid finally arrived at Shisha Palace. The once bright and airy main hall now had its doors and windows completely covered, shrouded in utter darkness. The young maid reported everything she had heard truthfully before withdrawing. As she departed, a sudden impulse made her glance back. There, hidden in the shadows, stood the Emperor's towering figure. A sliver of light filtered through the windows. Her breath caught. Every wall and corner of the palace was covered with portraits of the late Empress Xiaoyi. Seated, reclining, standing, smiling, or slightly frowning. Each expression vivid. Each portrait lifelike. And their majestic emperor, towering like a mountain, now bent over, shoulders trembling slightly. As if weeping. When she entered the palace, Empress Xiaoyi had been dead for years. She had only heard tales of her virtuous reputation. And of the emperor's supreme favor. Envy of all. In the past, she hadn't understood what such favor truly meant. But now, seeing how years after her death, the Supreme Emperor still painfully painted her portrait daily, still hid in the house she had lived in before her passing. As if only by doing so, could he find a moment's peace? She suddenly understood. That wasn't favor. It was love. An emperor's love. The Empress drank bitter medicine daily, all for the sake of delivering a healthy child. Yet fate turned against her. She gave birth prematurely. General Song was impeached for neglecting military duties and secretly trading with the southern barbarians, evidence backed by correspondence and the Song family seal. Chu Lizzie acted with thunderous severity. Within 7 days, he raided the Song residence, seizing the illegal gold and silver General Song had amassed over the years. The Song family's treasury held over 3 times the national coffers. The sheer volume of gold and silver was staggering. The evidence was irrefutable. General Song had no defense. He was sentenced to be beheaded publicly after the autumn harvest, while the entire Song household, 130 souls, was exiled to Lingnan. Upon hearing the news, the Empress fainted. The shock triggered her labor prematurely, though she was only 8 months pregnant. That night, no one in the Phoenix Palace found peace. Midwives were sent in one after another, basin after basin of bloody water carried out, cries of agony echoing through the air. Endlessly, unceasingly. By the time Chu Lizzie finally arrived, the prince born to the Empress had already been washed clean and placed beside her pillow. Seeing him come, a faint smile forced itself onto the Empress's deathly pale face. Your Majesty, you have finally come. Your servant has given birth to a son for you. Good. Chu Lizzie raised his hand to gently stroke the infant's small face, but the Empress noticed the blood from his fingertips staining the child's cheek. It seemed an extremely ill omen. Why is there blood on your Majesty's hand? Chu Lizzie smiled faintly. Having some free time, I went to the execution ground to oversee the punishment. Perhaps the executioner swung his blade too forcefully, and blood splattered onto my clothes. Hearing this, the Empress's expression darkened further. Yet Chu Lizzie's smile deepened. Does the Empress find this inauspicious? This child was born just as his maternal grandfather passed away. How pitiful. Earlier, they met, in a way. The Empress froze, momentarily unable to respond. What? Chu Lizzie patiently explained. Oh, I forgot to inform your Majesty. The prisoner executed today was General Song, your father, this child's maternal grandfather. All color drained from the Empress's face. Darkness engulfed her vision, and she fainted. Standing nearby, I watched the smile on Chu Lizzie's lips, pleased, icy. Terrifying. I knew he meant it. He deliberately provoked the Empress. Because back then, when I was struggling through the birth of the 4th prince, the Empress had come to Qixia Palace with her nose in the air to tell me my father had passed away. Overwhelmed by grief, I nearly lost both myself and the child. I knew all too well the agony of a loved one's brutal death. Worse than a dagger piercing the heart. Now, the Empress tasted it too. On the day the Song family was exiled, the Empress gave birth to the 5th prince, named Chu Shao. The very next day, he was proclaimed crown prince. Born prematurely, the crown prince was frail. As a first-time mother, the Empress knew little of nurturing an infant. Immediately after birth, he was sent to the Dream Return Pavilion, entrusted to wet nurses and nannies. Even the Empress was permitted to see the infant crown prince only once every 7 days. All marveled at Chu Lizzie's devotion and cherishing of the young heir. Yet I witnessed the knife-twisting agony of the Empress's separation from her son. With the frail crown prince out of sight, the Empress lived in constant dread and unease, her spirit stretched to the breaking point. All it took was a single spark to ignite. When the crown prince fell into the water at the age of 1, his life hanging by a thread, the Empress completely lost her mind. She demanded no evidence, sought no truth. She ordered the immediate execution of the palace maids and eunuchs who had attended to the crown prince. 11 in total. Nearly all were confidants who had served the Empress for years. Yet she showed no mercy. That day, the palace grounds ran red with blood. The wails of the servants hung heavy in the air, mingling with the thick, lingering stench of blood. By the time Chu Lizzie arrived, everything was already over. Bodies littered the ground, the scene a desolate wasteland. Yet the Empress watched it all, smiling, oblivious. After that day, the Empress lost all reputation for virtue. Throughout the court and harem, whenever the Empress was mentioned, there was no trace of praise left, only utter horror. She was known only as the demon Empress who brought ruin to the nation. And she was exactly like I once was. At that very moment, Chu Lizzie arrived at Qixia Palace once more. Surrounded by portraits covering the walls, she laughed with unrestrained abandon. Yao Yao, did you see that? Back then, the Empress schemed relentlessly to tarnish your reputation. The common folk knew nothing of your gentle heart, only seeing you as a demonic concubine. Now, I've repaid her in full. She caused my son to drown, inflicting excruciating pain upon you. I've repaid her for that too. Those palace servants were her lackeys, risking their lives to scheme against you. I made the Empress personally send them to their deaths. Yao Yao, my vengeance is complete. Are you pleased? In the dim light, his face was deathly pale, his eyes a chilling crimson, like winter snow, ready to shatter at the slightest warmth. 1 month later, the crown prince died. He was strangled to death by the very palace maid who attended him. Among the 11 palace attendants the Empress had beaten to death last time was the sister she would have risked her life to protect. With her sister gone, she sought only vengeance. She wanted the Empress to taste the agony of a knife piercing the heart, the pain of separation from her own flesh and blood. So, she strangled the crown prince while he slept at noon. The Empress, uneasy, went to check on the young crown prince. Lifting the blanket, she saw his face already purple and lifeless. She fainted in terror. When she awoke, she clung to life by a thread. The imperial physician declared her days were numbered. Upon hearing this, Chu Lizzie arrived at the Empress's palace that evening. The Empress sat silently, tears streaming down her face as she clutched a small garment. Chu Lizzie stepped forward, snatched the cloth from her trembling hand, and uttered an ambiguous hum, "Empress. The agony of losing a beloved child, does it feel good?" A sense of foreboding gripped the Empress, her voice quivering, "Your Majesty?" Chu Lizzie sighed softly, "When Yao Yao died all those years ago, I suffered this very agony. I wished I could have died instantly." Bloodshot eyes filled the Empress's gaze as she murmured in stunned disbelief, "All these years. Your Majesty still hasn't forgotten Empress Xiaoyi." "No, that's not it. If you hadn't forgotten her, how could you have favored me? How could you have neglected the 4th prince? How could you have abandoned him to crown my son as crown prince? All of this, every single thing, was your design?" Her face drained of color as she gasped for breath, her body straining to stay upright. Though she looked utterly spent, her eyes widened in fury as she glared at Chu Lizzie, desperate for an answer. Chu Lizzie watched her with unhurried composure. He said nothing. Yet his silence was an admission. This drove the Empress, already shattered by the loss of her son, utterly mad. She screamed hoarsely, "Shower! Shower was your son too. How could you be so heartless?" "My son?" Chu Lizzie smiled. With a gentle lift of his hand, a black-clad guard entered and knelt before him. "Empress, does this man look familiar to you?" The Empress's face paled. "I do not recognize him," Chu Lizzie snorted derisively, sighing slowly. "You've rolled around in the sheets with him countless times here. Intimate in bed, conceiving a child in secret, yet turn your back on him the moment you step off the bed. Empress, are you truly so heartless? You know?" The Empress's eyes widened in horror. Chu Lizzie nodded with a smile, his eyes brimming with excitement. "Of course I know. Not only do I know, but I even arranged him for you. Otherwise, who would pretend to be the Emperor, sharing your bed night after night? You. Her hands trembled. Chu Lizzie seemed sated with her pitiful despair. He seized her throat, his gaze as cold as steel, sending shivers down her spine. "I ask but one thing. Where is Yao Yao's corpse?" At this very moment, the Empress finally understood everything. She saw clearly the conspiracy meticulously planned, one that began when Chu Lizzie returned triumphant from battle, and another that started after Yao's death. Her voice raspy, tears streaming down her face. "So, you knew all along that the body was a fake. You endured all these years without a hint of emotion, exhausting every effort to feign affection for me. You made me truly believe I'd outsmarted the world. You seized upon my brother's mistake to punish him severely, forcing me to beg for mercy. Then you uttered those words about the amnesty for pregnant women, making my heart flutter. After that, you sent him to seduce me, leading me into sin and bearing Shower. And knowing Shower wasn't your own, you pretended to name him Crown Prince, because you never intended to let him grow up. You only wanted to use Shower to torment me, so you could avenge He Yao. Am I right? Am I right? Everything, every single thing, was your scheme." Chu Lizzie stared at her coldly. He didn't even want to exchange a single word with her. But this utterly enraged the Empress. She let out 2 hoarse laughs before suddenly declaring, "Do you want to know how He Yao died? Poisoned by me. That day, I broke her limbs and administered the poison. She coughed up blood, too racked with agony to speak, yet she refused to cry out. She only stared at me with those eyes, as if etching my image into her soul, vowing to haunt me as a vengeful ghost. But I fear her not. She was no match for me in life, and as a ghost in death, she is even less so. Chu Lizzie's eyes flashed crimson, his desire to strangle her on the spot nearly overwhelming him. But he could not. He still did not know where the body of his beloved lay. The Empress seemed to sense his hesitation, her laughter growing wilder. You've schemed endlessly to discover where Hiao's body lies, yet I refuse to tell you. You will tell me. Chu Lizzie released her, meticulously wiping his palms with a handkerchief. He lowered his gaze, his expression brimming with disgust, because if you don't tell me, I'll expose Shower's true origins. A bastard, not even worthy of burial in the imperial mausoleum after death. Tossed into a mass grave, left for wild dogs and wolves to devour. You care so much about your son, do you want him to find no peace even in death? The Empress had not anticipated Chu Lizzie's utter ruthlessness. She suddenly lunged at him, her mouth open in a wail. Chu Lizzie, you beast. You beast. He's not even 2 years old. How can you be so heartless? Chu Lizzie looked down at her with a condescending glance, his eyes dark and hollow. My youngest brother died at only 23. She carried your child within her. When you took her life, did you ever ask yourself if you were being heartless? If you were a beast? His gaze fixed on the Empress with savage intensity. His teeth ground together with such force they seemed to spark, his voice straining through clenched jaws. The Song family demanded military power, I granted it. You demanded the Empress's throne, I granted it. But I only wanted my wife. I only wanted my wife. Why would you refuse to give her to me? Why did you kill her? Why? 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 The Emperor's repeated, piercing questions, stained with the blood of his tragically deceased wife, echoed through the grand hall. Like the blood-curdling cry of a phoenix. Shattered. Despair. Since Chu Lizzie ascended the throne, he had reclaimed lost territories, brought peace and prosperity to the land. Officials revered him as a wise ruler, the people worshipped him as a god of war. Yet none knew that this sovereign emperor, possessing everything, would sacrifice all to bring his wife back to life. Forever lost, my love. Thus, all I see is ruin. The Empress had never witnessed such terror in Chu Lizzie's eyes. She froze in shock, only to be seized by the throat and hurled to the ground. I ask you one last time, Yao Yao. Where is she? His eyes, mere inches away, glowed like a soul-devouring specter. The Empress could hold back no longer. Weeping and screaming, she uttered her final words, deep within the peach grove, beneath Yuyao Terrace. Yuyao Terrace. That was where Chu Lizzie and I first met. All these years, he must have come back countless times. Never doing anything. Just standing there, silently watching. As if that alone could bring him a shred of peace. So it wasn't an illusion after all. The breeze carried my wife's tenderness. Simply because my corpse was hidden here. My corpse. Chu Lizzie had dug it up himself. Nearly 3 years had passed since my death. My body had long since rotted into dust. My features were unrecognizable. Yet the stench of blood lingered, and the corpse was covered in red characters, eerie and terrifying. Chu Lizzie had the Empress dragged before him, demanding to know what this was. The Empress, her expression deranged, laughed like a madwoman. This is virgin's blood. When a person dies, if their body is covered in virgin's blood, their soul cannot find rebirth after death. It will remain trapped until it is reduced to ashes. I watched from the sidelines. Finally, I understood why my soul refused to rest after death. It was all because of the Empress. She hated me with a vengeance. Even in death, she refused to grant me peace. I should thank her. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to stay by Chu Lizzie's side, nor witness him avenging me with my own eyes. But these words undoubtedly tore Chu Lizzie's heart to shreds. How could he have imagined the Empress was so vile? That she would deny his beloved even a peaceful rest after death. Rage surged through his heart. Chu Lizzie coughed violently, spitting out a mouthful of blood. Blood dripped through his fingers, staining the floor. The palace attendants panicked, but the Empress laughed even more gleefully. So, Chu Lizzie, perhaps your little one is still watching you from somewhere in this courtyard. She saw you kill so many people. Tell me, do you think she might be afraid of you? As she spoke, she suddenly wrenched free from her restraints and burst into maniacal laughter. The Empress had gone mad. This was the unanimous conclusion of everyone present. A gust of wind swept through, lifting a swirl of fallen peach blossoms. Their fragrance, sweet and delicate, felt eerily out of place in this moment. Recalling the Empress's words, the palace attendants near the corpse couldn't help but shiver. Only Chu Lizzie remained, watching me silently. Then, he raised his hand and gently wiped the dirt from my face, as if I were not dead but merely napping. Unwilling to disturb my sweet dreams, he lifted me into his arms. His smile held tears. His tone was soft and gentle. She won't come. My Yao Yao loved me so deeply, how could she fear me? Lifting me up, step by step, he passed through layers of palace attendants, through alleys and red walls, startling flocks of sparrows. He leaned close to my ear and whispered softly, "Little one, do not fear. Your husband has come to take you home." Chu Lizzie invited enlightened monks to the palace, day and night, to purify me of the evil curse and aid my rebirth. He never believed in such things. Even the amulet I had obtained for him, though he treasured my thoughtfulness immensely, he couldn't help but laugh. If amulets truly brought safety, so many soldiers wouldn't have perished on the battlefield. I scolded him for his nonsense, but he tilted his handsome face up, charming me into softening. Calling me gently, "Yao Yao, my lady, please forgive this humble one." His words made my cheeks flush. I twisted his ear fiercely, but seeing him grimace exaggeratedly at the pain, my anger melted into laughter. Yet now, he truly believed the Empress's words, that restless spirits haunt the living, denying them rebirth. Before others, he declared my profound love for him, insisting I could never fear his bloodthirsty nature. In truth, however, nightmares haunted him daily. Night after night, he would wake in terror. His face was as pale as paper, his body drenched in sweat, trembling uncontrollably. His eyes were unfocused and lifeless, and he would mutter unconsciously, "Don't be afraid of me, Yao Yao. Don't be afraid." My fear had become a nightmare. Day and night, it haunted him. Watching him, my heart felt like it was being sliced open, inch by inch, with a knife cutting through flesh, causing unbearable agony. I leaned against him, reaching out to lightly touch his face, wanting to smooth his furrowed brow. I wanted to tell him, "Chu Lizzie, I've never been afraid of you. You did it all for me. I know." Yet even when two people are this close, they cannot communicate, much less comfort each other. This is the closest of distances. And also, the farthest of proximities. Helpless. And beyond redemption. Perhaps the reincarnation chant truly took effect. I felt my body growing lighter and lighter, more and more transparent. But I did not wish to be reborn. I only wished to stay by Chu Lizzie's side. Yet I cannot control the duration of my slumber. Often, I awaken to find half a month has passed, sometimes even half a year. All this serves as a constant reminder. My time here is running out. But it doesn't matter. Even if I wake for but a quarter of an hour, seeing Chu Lizzie safe and sound brings me peace. As for Chu Lizzie, he grows thinner by the day. Barely 30, his temples were already streaked with gray. His authority within the palace was formidable. Save for Zhaoer, no one dared meet the emperor's gaze directly. Thus, no one noticed that the once towering figure, majestic as a mountain, had now wasted away to skin and bones, his face devoid of even a trace of joy. Leaning against his shoulder, I murmured to myself, "By you, you're not eating properly again. I've been so sleepy lately, always struggling to keep my eyes open. When I'm not watching you, you're definitely not eating again, right?" Chu Lizzie remained focused on the memorials before him. He couldn't hear my words. All these years, I'd long understood. But I always wondered, could Chu Lizzie truly love me so little that he couldn't sense my presence? It seems his love for me isn't deep enough. Next life, I'll settle the score with him. Lost in these thoughts, I drifted into a deep sleep without noticing. When I opened my eyes again, I was roused by a voice close to my ear. Yao yao. He yao yao. I opened my eyes to see a young, handsome face. A flicker of familiarity. But I must have slept too long, my mind was blank, nothing came back. I tilted my head to look at him. The man gazed back intently, patiently waiting for me to remember. His eyes made me want to cry. And then, I did cry. I remembered. I remembered everything. I cautiously whispered his name. Chu Lizzie? No. Chu Lizzie shook his head, correcting me earnestly. Yao Yao, you should call me by you, or husband. He always loved teasing me. But I always ended up laughing. Yet the next moment, I snapped back to reality, filled with dread. No. How could you be dead? You were only 30, Chu Lizzie smiled. He reached out his hand to me and said, Congratulations, Yao Yao. I've come to take you home. Home? I looked up and saw a peach grove standing not far away. The Yueyao terrace lay beneath the peach blossoms. So, unnoticed, another spring had arrived. The snow had just cleared. The sky grew warmer. It was time for me to go home. End of main text, extra chapter. The fourth prince. Everyone said that when my mother was alive, she was the most favored woman in the harem, unmatched by any other. But in my mind, my memories of her are few and far between. I can only vaguely recall a pair of gentle eyes, a soft embrace, and the sweet fragrance that lingered on her. And those words, Zhaoer, come to mother. But she died. She died in the palace plague. And so I lost my mother. My grandmother raised me from infancy. She was a woman of decisive action, strict with me. Yet sometimes, when she looked at me, a hint of melancholy would flicker in her eyes. She would sigh softly and say, Zhaoer, you bear such a strong resemblance to your mother. Your father, the emperor, would surely adore you. Because the emperor had adored my mother deeply. Everyone said so. But grandmother was wrong. Father never showed me affection. He seldom even saw me. He was always busy. Busy with the affairs of the front court. When he occasionally visited the inner palace, he would pay his respects to grandmother and then lavish his attention on the Empress. Later, when the Empress bore my fifth younger brother, father immediately named him Crown Prince. This showed not a shred of the affection he had for my mother, nor any affection for me. But then, the Crown Prince died. The Empress died too. I also learned the truth, the Crown Prince wasn't father's son at all. He was the bastard born of the Empress's affair. Father cherished the Empress so deeply, yet this was her repayment. I felt it was so unworthy of father. I thought father would grieve for a long time. But the very next day after the Empress died, father came to the Empress Dowager's palace. I studied him closely. Only then did I notice how strikingly handsome he was. And there was a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. It seemed as though the Empress's death, the Crown Prince's death, had brought him great pleasure. What puzzled me even more was when grandmother gazed deeply at him and sighed, After all these years, you've finally gotten your wish. I didn't understand what she meant. But father's smile deepened. Grandmother beckoned to me, instructing, Go with your father. I froze. Somewhat at a loss. It was father who gently took my hand, examining me from head to toe for a long while. His gaze finally settled on my eyes. Grandmother had told me that these eyes were what I inherited most from mother. Father looked at me. More like he was looking at mother. For the first time, he held me in his arms. When he spoke again, his voice carried a hint of suppressed emotion. Zhaoer, you've grown up. We were never particularly close. Yet I didn't resist his embrace. His words made my eyes sting and my heart ache. I cried for a long time, as if a boat drifting for ages had finally found its harbor. Secure. Strong. I followed father in learning state affairs. Officials revered his authority, afraid to provoke his anger. In the past, only mother could counsel him. Now, only I remain. Others have curiously asked me why I'm not afraid of him. I thought about it. But said nothing. To them, father is the emperor. But to me, he is simply father. He often shared little stories from his past with mother. When your mother was still alive, you were just 1 year old. You cried often, slept soundly, and clung to her constantly. You wouldn't let go of her even when asleep. I was about to go to war. Your mother, worried, tried to sew me an undershirt before I left. But she had no choice but to cut a piece from the collar of my own shirt for you. Later, she used that piece to sew you a cloth tiger to hold while you slept. See, this is it. He handed me the cloth tiger. Many years had passed, yet I could still see the meticulous stitches, each thread a testament to a mother's love for her child. I held it, staring at it. Slowly, a heavy, dull ache settled in. It came from the bond called mother. After all these years, I finally realized that the gentle mother I remembered had long since passed away. No one would ever hold me close again. No one would ever carry my mother's scent. I began to feel an intense curiosity about my mother. How did I meet your mother? Father paused, then set down the memorial and spoke softly. We knew each other from childhood. She was the youngest daughter of the He family, a powerful minister. Empress Sui wished to betroth her to the crown prince, but she refused. She told the Empress either she would shave her head and become a nun, or she would marry me. The Empress flew into a rage, yet feared General He's military power. She had no choice but to let her marry me. She married me at 16 and followed me to our fief at 17. Oppressed by Empress Sui and constantly provoked by the southern barbarians, she endured great suffering. Your eldest and second brothers also succumbed to the strain and passed away then. Later, Empress Sui imprisoned the late emperor and seized control of the court. I joined General He's army to march to the capital's aid. After fighting relentlessly for half a year, we finally reached the capital. By then, your third brother was already 2 years old, yet he had fallen into Empress Sui's hands and was thrown to his death. She married me and endured unimaginable hardship, suffering the agonizing pain of losing her children 3 times. Yet I couldn't even grant her the title of Empress. I once considered abandoning this throne at any cost. All I wanted was to be with your mother, just the 2 of us, for a lifetime. It was your mother who persuaded me otherwise. She said, "Chu Lizzie, you are an emperor. This is your duty." She cared not for the Empress's title, only for my true heart. Though she spoke thus, I knew how many times she wept in private. The court officials all said I indulged your mother too much, yet they did not know it was she who constantly yielded, who compromised step by step for me. No matter how much I cherished her, how deeply I loved her, I could never make amends for her sacrifices. By the end, his voice broke into sobs, droplets of tears falling onto my neck. Burning hot. Regret. And an overwhelming longing. By the time I was 8, Father's nightmares had grown so severe he could no longer sleep peacefully. Once awakened, he would lie awake all night. His emaciation was terrifying in its speed. Father often stayed at Shisha Palace, the residence where Mother had lived before her passing. When I visited him, he grew weaker day by day. Only when he finally fell ill and took to his bed did I realize that the man who could once effortlessly lift me now lay there like a withered branch ready to snap. He drifted in and out of deep slumber, sometimes lucid, sometimes dazed. The entire hall was thick with the pungent scent of medicine. Seeing me enter, he struggled to sit up. I smiled as I spoke to him, recounting amusing incidents from the day, discussing court affairs, and occasionally asking about the past. But Father Emperor had no strength left for memories. He remained silent for a long time. I thought he had fallen asleep. Just as I was about to rise and leave, he suddenly grasped my hand. His gaze fixed deeply upon my brow and eyes, as if he were truly seeing me. Yet it also seemed as if he were seeing my mother. After a long while, he finally gathered enough strength to ask me softly, "Zhaoer, tell me, your mother has never entered my dreams all these years. Could it be she too resents me for treating her poorly?" Hearing these words, my breath caught. A heavy stone seemed to press down on my chest. Father was haunted by nightmares every night. Yet Mother never appeared in them. What, then, did Father dream of that filled him with such terror and restlessness day and night? I dared not imagine it, nor could I fathom it. Gazing into the man's shattered, agonized eyes, I could only clasp his emaciated hand with trembling fingers and declare earnestly, "No, Father. Mother cherished you most of all. How could she ever resent you?" My words came out slow and deliberate. I didn't know if I was trying to convince him or myself. Even after leaving Chisha Palace, my heart refused to settle. In a daze, I glanced back. The vast Chisha Palace glistened in the sunlight, red bricks and green tiles, solemn yet splendid. But father had sealed the windows. Not a single ray of light could now pierce the curtains and fall upon the hall. Father had locked Chisha Palace. And locked himself away forever. Suddenly, I recalled my father's final words. A faint smile played at his lips, tinged with inexplicable melancholy, as if he truly saw my long-lost mother in the darkness. He said, "Yes, no one loved me more than she did. I miss your mother. I truly miss her." I could not persuade my father to continue living. For him, living might have been more terrifying than death. I only wished that if mother truly had a spirit in heaven, she would enter father's dreams. To reunite with him. Just once. That would be enough. And so, mother took father away. Another night. Another dream. Throughout his life, father had bid farewell to the late emperor, to the Empress Dowager, to his own wife. His tears had long since dried up. Yet when his own time came, he departed with a smile. I believe he must have seen mother. They were likely still the 16-year-olds newly wed. Nothing had yet happened. Nothing had yet begun. One handsome, one gentle. Childhood sweethearts, a match made in heaven. They were meant to grow old together. The end.